Churches have enjoyed a long history of tax exemption, so much so, in fact, they make up for $71 billion in lost taxes. And recently they've begun to inject themselves and their ideologies into the political arena, all the while paying nothing in taxes. It's time for churches to pick up their own tab so we won't have to. According to a 2012 article, the U.S. government foregoes $71 billion in taxes every year. The unfairness of taxing all Americans to subsidize religious institutions that only some Americans utilize is blatantly obvious. And if you are religious, you aren't just subsidizing your religion, but all of them that claim tax-exempt status. Hinduism, Christianity, Buddhism, Islam, etc. Giving preferential tax breaks to religious organizations is also unconstitutional in that it goes against the separation of church and state. Today, I will convince you that religious organizations should be taxed and take you through the many compelling reasons to do so. To understand why the tax-exempt status for churches must be revoked, it helps to first learn the history of it. U.S. churches received an official federal tax exemption in 1894, but unofficially were tax-exempt since the founding of the nation. The idea behind this was actually a pretty solid one, in that churches provide great benefits to society through their good deeds. They give to the poor and needy in the community, where government assistance programs may not be able to take care of everyone. They also impact the community through reduction in crime. But according to a Supreme Court dissenting opinion by Robert H. Jackson in 1947, churches serve a religious purpose that does not aid the government, so their tax exemptions are not justified. Tax exemptions to secular nonprofits like hospitals, homeless shelters, and animal welfare programs are justified because such organizations do work that would otherwise fall to the government agencies. Churches, while they do perform charitable work, exist primarily for religious worship and instruction, which the U.S. government is constitutionally barred from performing. Although there are laws in place to prevent churches and other nonprofit organizations from becoming active in politics, many churches still do. Many churches and church leaders endorse candidates and try to effect change using the very money they save through tax-exempt status and donation write-offs. In 1954, a law was passed that banned tax-exempt organizations from political campaigning. Yet for the last 6 years, a steadily growing group of people have gathered for what they call Pulpit Freedom Sunday, in an attempt to challenge the IRS on the law that they think is unfair. This is a blatant disregard for the law and shows that they are not responsible for the privilege of tax-exempt status. Subsidization through tax exemption means that you're not indirectly giving money to just your religious affiliation, but all of them. We also subsidize wasteful and extravagant spending. By allowing churches to be exempt, citizens, both religious and irreligious, are forced to give money to churches. Christians are supporting not just Christian organizations, but Islamic, Buddhist, Hindu, etc., and vice versa. This is not a new idea, however, as alluded to by an excerpt from Mark Twain's Notebook. He says, "No church property is taxed, and so the infidel, the atheist, and the man without religion are taxed to make up the deficit and the public income thus caused." Subsidizing organizations that we either do not use or believe is unconstitutional. And these subsidies are supporting already wealthy pastors and creating megachurches, bringing in millions of dollars every year that they are not required to divulge how they spend it. Several examples of this lavish and excessive spending were uncovered in a probe conducted by Senator Charles Grassley, as highlighted in the NPR article in 2007. It found personal use of Rolls-Royce cars, private jets, and multi-million-dollar homes, a $23,000 toilet with a marble top, and other such wasteful spending. None of these things are illegal, but they do raise concerns about why a church would need them and why we must foot the bill. Now, as I come to a close, I hope you see why we must, at the very least, revoke tax-exempt status for churches that break the law, but really why we should end tax-exempt status for churches altogether. Churches must be taxed. The idea that they be exempt is antiquated, exclusionary, and unconstitutional. Taxation of religious organizations is beneficial to society because it would mean less individual taxation and ensure that we are not subsidizing people or ideas that we don't agree with. The next time you go to do your taxes, vote for your congressmen or women, or vote on new laws. I hope you'll keep these facts in mind and vote for laws and people who want to end tax exemption for churches. And if you feel particularly moved by this speech, I urge you to contact your senator and tell them how displeased you are by this injustice. You know, come to think of it, instead of going to school, maybe I should go on to be a pastor. That seems to be where the money is.